Good Yontif, and a continued Shana Tova to you all. For those who are continuing your High Holy Day journey with University Synagogue, we welcome you back. And for those who are with us for the first time, welcome. And we hope that you tonight and tomorrow will find meaning, hope, and spirituality in our time together.
And so we come together tonight and tomorrow to pray, to sing and to reflect, to remember and mourn, to make amends and to forgive. But we also come together to bring our light and create a community of holiness and connection that spans the globe.
Our journey will consist of live and pre-recorded segments. Together we are creating this virtual congregation. Not some of us, but all of us together. For those who have the silver Mishkan HaNefesh Machzor for Yom Kippur, we invite you to use the prayer book to pray and reflect and follow along. And if you don't have the prayer book, don't worry. We invite you to use the slides on the screen that we share to elevate your prayers.
We are taught that the words on the page, or in this case, the words also on the screen, are meant to inspire the words that are in our heart and on our soul. These words are mere stepping stones for our own personal prayers.
This evening we light a memorial candle. If you have one in your home, I invite you to light it now if you have not already. At this time, we remember those we have lost at this season and in years past, those we have lost in the past year and those who we are remembering, all those we are remembering tonight.
So we ask you to sit back, find your machzor, your prayer book, light your candle, take in a deep breath, begin the process of repentance and forgiveness, live and pre-recorded, physically distant but spiritually connected. We welcome our co-presidents, Jennifer Harmon and Fern Topaz Salka, to kindle our Yom Kippur lights.
I'm Fern Topaz Salka, and I'm here with Jen Harmon, and we are co-presidents of University Synagogue. On this solemn and holy Erev Yom Kippur, Jen and I, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, welcome you as we pray, fast, and reflect together, separately. We know this period is a difficult one, but we also know from our own personal experiences and from the teachings of our Torah that this too shall pass.
In the meanwhile, our community is here to lend support to you, and we trust you will find comfort in our shared worship. We wish you strength and, yes, joy throughout the coming year.
Gemar Hatima Tova.
May you be sealed in the book of life. Now we begin, as always, with the lighting of the holiday candles.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivonu lehadlik ner, shel yom tov.
Blessed are you, eternal our God, creator of the universe, who has commanded us to light the holiday candles.
On page 14 in your machzor, Yom Kippur, the Jewish people's festival of the soul, and Kol Nidre, its sacred portal. A night of deep emotions, a night, as the psalmist wrote, to rejoice with trembling.
We rejoice at the sound of Kol Nidre, rhythmic words of release from vows, oaths, and promises to God we fail to keep.
We tremble at the melody, music of spiritual amazement. It fills us with awe as we stand before God and Torah.
We rejoice that we stand together, strengthened by community in this hour of shared weakness and humility.
We tremble, for tonight we confess our flaws, admit our imperfection, and acknowledge a power far beyond our understanding.
We rejoice that we commit ourselves to great endeavors because we feel so deeply and think so nobly.
We tremble, for we find that our ideals are far greater than our ability. Our promises surpass our might.
We rejoice in the freedom that is Kol Nidre's true gift, the freedom to begin a new year without fear of failure, to aspire to be God's image in the world.
We tremble because we are mortal, and we rejoice in our gratitude for life.
We rejoice with trembling and enter Kol Nidre to face our humanity.
A story is told of Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev that one Kol Nidre, he refused to start the service. When his followers asked why, what was the delay, he said, "I don't see Beryl the tailor." Now this seemed a rather odd thing to everyone, as Beryl was certainly not one whose attendance or not seemed so significant on such an auspicious day. Beryl was sent for, and when he finally arrived, the rabbi wanted to know the reason for the delay. "Because," Beryl answered, "I want nothing to do with God. God's been terribly unfair this year. It has been a terrible year. If something could go wrong, it has gone wrong. A worldwide pandemic. Businesses have failed. There has been civil unrest. Things have gone from bad to worse. Oh, certainly I've not been perfect, but compared to God? Well, I have nowhere to take my complaints, so all I can do is protest, and therefore I'm not davening this Yom Kippur. On Rosh Hashanah, I didn't come to hear the blowing of the shofar, and I'm not coming to shul for Kol Nidre." Well, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak thought about this and said, "But Beryl, you know, Yom Kippur is a time of forgiveness. Perhaps you can find it in your heart to forgive God." Beryl thought for a moment and said, "Well, okay, very well. But only because you, Rabbi, have asked, and only if God gives forgiveness to all." Well, Rabbi Levi was overjoyed with Beryl's response. He lifted his eyes towards the heavens. "Master of the universe, do you hear? Beryl says that he will forgive you. But only if you too forgive everyone. I, Levi Yitzhak, Rabbi of Berdichev, decree that this is an equitable settlement. You, God, are forgiven, and all transgressions that have been committed during the entire year, you, God, must forgive them as well. Now, let us pray Kol Nidre." Like Beryl, this year it may rightly seem that our claim against God is much greater than God's claim against us. It does indeed seem that God is the one that should be asking for forgiveness. The reality is that we all, from the most low to the Most High, have much for which to both ask and for which to give forgiveness. So God, we will forgive you your trespasses, even as we ask and receive forgiveness from others, as well as from ourselves. For only by sincerely opening our hearts in forgiveness and letting go of it all can we turn towards the future with hearts filled with hope and with promise. And now, let's join Rabbi Levi and Beryl and pray Kol Nidre. I invite you to turn to page 18.
Before we offer the words of Shema on this Kol Nidre, we think about the meaning of Shema, the meaning of oneness. And we look back on this past year, we make amends for the moments in which we missed the mark, and we think about the times in which we have not been one. One with ourselves, one with our soul, one with the highest ideals in which we should live our lives, the times that we have not been one with God, with our community, with our family and friends. Let us take in that deep breath of oneness, and let us declare that in these words of Shema, we will make better in this coming year to be one.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
As we prepare to hear the beautiful words of Veyahavta from the recipients of our golden kippot, from generations of past to ones who received it just this past year, we think about the words of Veyahavta, commanding us to teach the words of God to our children, to speak of them in our homes and on our way. One does not have to speak the actual Hebrew words of Torah to speak and teach the words of God. One simply has to turn inward to our souls and teach the words of goodness, and teach the words of compassion, and teach the words of justice. And if we do this, then we will fulfill this commandment of teaching and preaching and speaking God's words. We join together with Veyahavta.
Veyahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'elech asher anochi mitzvatecha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'kibarta bam בשבתך בביתך ובביתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לרוחכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Before we sing the beautiful and comforting words of Hashkevenu, we reflect on a teaching inside our prayer books. When fears multiply and danger threatens, when sickness comes and when death confronts us, it is God's blessing of shalom that sustains us and upholds us, lightening our burden, dispelling our worry, restoring our strength, renewing our hope, reviving us. We take comfort in these words of Hashkevenu. As evening descends upon us, may we think of those that have provided that Sukkot Shalom, that shelter of peace in our lives, and may we hold them close in this year to come.
ובצל כנפיך
When I was a kid growing up at school, you always knew something important happened when you had to stand. It was in an assembly, it was for the Pledge of Allegiance. Whatever it was, standing meant something very important. And that's why we're about to stand, wherever we may be, if you are comfortable, to stand for our Amidah, the middle section of our High Holy Day prayers. Let us, all who are able, please rise. Holiness is not some pie-in-the-sky opportunity. It's not going off to some desert island or climbing the highest mountain. Holiness is created in the relationships we have between one another. During this time of pandemania, we've seen so many people being able to care for others, grocery shop, and pick up prescriptions, and call on their neighbor, and make sure no one is alone. And these are the ways we build holiness. These are the elements of a holy life. Despite pandemania, may these mitzvot continue.
When we think of this idea of peace, when we think of this idea of shalom, we think of the root of the word shalem, meaning wholeness, meaning that which is complete. Knowing that when we are complete and when we are whole, we are at peace. We leave a year which at times felt incomplete, which was not whole. And we enter a new year unknown, with uncertainty. But it starts within. It starts within our souls. And it starts within our family and within our community. If we can strive for that sense of wholeness, it might not look the way it looked 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But how do we reimagine wholeness in this time of uncertainty? Can we get there? And once we've found wholeness, then together we will sing this song of peace. Shalom Rav.
Shalom
Each time we join together in prayer, we pause for a moment to pray for the healing of so many. We pray for those we hold dear in our hearts, our loved ones, suffering illness of body, mind, and spirit. And we expand the circle to include all those who are suffering from this terrible virus, those who are struggling to recover physically, and those struggling with the emotional and spiritual scars this pandemic has created. We expand our circle further to include all those who suffer. And finally, on this day of forgiveness and healing, we expand the circle to include ourselves as well, as we seek to move forward renewed and whole and healed. May we all be blessed with a refuah shlema, a full and complete healing. If you desire, I invite you through the comment box to share the names of those for whom you are praying, as we turn now to our prayer for healing. The story is told of a huge naval vessel getting ready to leave port. And on the hillside overlooking the scene, a large crowd gathers to watch the great, massive boat, the ship, depart. Among them was a small child who waved to the ship. And an adult standing nearby asked the child to whom she was waving. She replied, "Oh, I'm waving to the captain of the ship." The man asked, "Do you think the captain of such a great ship is going to notice you standing here on the hillside waving to him?" "I am sure of it," the child replied. "Why are you so sure?" the adult asked. "Because," the child answered, "the captain is my father." We spend a great deal of time during these days addressing the captain of the ship, the eternal one, the sovereign, the judge, ruler of the universe. But we seek intimacy as well, connection to a compassionate, caring, and nurturing God, who, like a loving parent, offers unconditional support. It is similarly easy for us to become our own harsh rulers, handing down severe judgments, placing overwhelming and unreasonable expectations both upon ourselves and upon others. We need not lose sight, we must not lose sight of the God who is also our parent, And similarly, not lose touch with the love, care, and compassion we must offer to others and, of course, to ourselves. With Avinu Malkeinu, we are called to that balance, to acknowledge and accept our missteps, but also to be a source of compassion, care, and love. With such balance, we can successfully be the captains of our own ship.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, (2,660 years ago,
In 640 BCE, an 8-year-old child ascended to the throne of the southern Israelite kingdom of Judah, following the revolt against and the assassination of his idolatrous father. That young boy, Josiah, became the 16th king of Judah. The book of 2 Chronicles tells us that in the 18th year of his reign, as Josiah was overseeing the restoration of the temple, a scroll of the law was discovered. The exact content of this scroll is uncertain, but many think it to have been some version of Deuteronomy, or perhaps an early version of what would become the Torah. The king had the scroll read to him and immediately fell into despair and deep mourning, realizing the extent to which he had failed to live up to the ethic of leadership depicted there. What were these teachings that caused Josiah such distress? Well, I think we can guess. We know that vital to Deuteronomy's moral instruction is the obligation to care for the widow, the orphan, the stranger. And as you are likely well aware by now, no less than 36 times is this obligation decreed in the book of Deuteronomy. What was likely revealed to Josiah were instructions for the building of a nation where empathy is a foundational value, where all, regardless of political, economic, or social status, are recognized, cared for, and have implicit worth. Josiah realized that as a leader, he had failed in his most basic responsibility to his people. Rising from his mourning, he immediately initiated a program of reforms, transforming both the nature of his leadership and instituting religious, political, and social changes in order to reflect the ethics and values found in this scroll, in our scroll. Josiah strove to build the promised land that he understood from this scroll to be his obligation. For his personal transformation and the reformation of his kingdom, King Josiah is considered to be one of the great kings of the ancient Israelite nation. Some 2,400 years later, this scroll once again played a vital role in defining the direction of a nation. Over several sweltering days at the end of June and beginning of July, in the midst of growing political chaos and civil unrest, leaders from every region of the land gathered together. They represented a wide range of views and opinions. They were often in vehement disagreement with each other. At times it seemed that their meeting would come to no productive end. But ultimately, they came to realize that what they shared in common was so much more significant than their disagreements. They agreed on a path forward, defined in great part by the words of that ancient scroll. And on July 4th, 1776, they signed a document memorializing their vision. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. With these words, our nation's founding document rings forth its biblical lineage. They reflect one of the foundational principles of that ancient scroll, an idea that by now you all know so well, Tselem Elohim, that we are each created equally in God's image. Like the ancient Israelite king, our nation's ancestors understood that there are certain divinely ordained, inalienable rights that are not subject to the whim of human rulers. Our founders saw democracy, with its fundamental commitment to equality, individual rights, and human dignity, as fundamentally rooted in the words of that ancient scroll. In addition to the Declaration of Independence, they also considered the design for a seal that would represent their new vision, represent their new nation. Not surprisingly, the original design came from the scroll, It was an adaptation of the breastplate worn by the high priest in the ancient temple. The breastplate included 12 uniquely colored stones, placed side by side as a reminder to the leaders of the ancient Jewish nation of both the uniqueness of each individual tribe and, at the same time, their unity in common cause and values as one nation. Like King Josiah 2 millennia earlier, our founders saw in the birth of this new nation the fulfillment of the biblical vision of unique and distinct tribes united in the building of a promised land. And the motto that was chosen for that seal expressed both their diversity and their unity. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Now, my intention in telling this story is not to whitewash, pun intended, the well-known imperfections of our nation's founders. They were profoundly human and certainly flawed in significant ways. As we know, the lives that many of them lived did not exemplify the values or the vision of the more perfect union they set forth in our nation's foundational document. But for me, that does not diminish in any way the vision of liberty and justice for all, which is their gift to us. Sadly, as the tragic events of this summer show, 244 years later, that vision remains an aspiration rather than a reality. In fact, it seems to me that we are moving in the opposite direction. Ex uno plurus. Out of one, we are becoming many. The flames of tribalism of which I spoke on Rosh Hashanah have been stoked into a conflagration as destructive to our nation as the wildfires we have suffered here on the West Coast. Smoldering embers of fear and distrust have been callously blown into a wildfire that is burning out of control and is devouring us. As author Robert Putnam recently wrote, we are more polarized as a nation than at any time since the late 19th century. He points out unprecedented political polarization, a fraying social fabric, public and private narcissism. Americans today, he suggests, can agree on only one thing. This is the worst of times. And frankly, it is hard to disagree. As we gather together on this Kol Nidre Eve, challenged by the teachings and reflections of this day to consider where we stand and what we stand for, we find ourselves facing some of the same questions that likely challenged both King Josiah and our founding fathers. What is the ethic upon which this nation will stand as it moves forward? What values will inform our nation's character? How might the morals and ethics of our scroll inform the choices we will make in the coming days? And when it comes our time to choose, will we, like King Josiah, like our nation's founders, take the words of our scroll to heart? Will we raise up to positions of leadership those who exemplify the vision of leadership inscribed in our most sacred scroll? Responding to Moses' example of leadership, a midrash on the book of Exodus offers us this instruction. As soon as one is appointed head of a community and dons the cloak of leadership, he or she must no longer say, I live for my own benefit. I don't care about the community. Rather, the whole burden of the community is on that person's shoulder. Whether the leader be divine or human, our scroll teaches an ethic that places the needs of the people first. The whole burden of the community is on that person's shoulder. Will we exercise our franchise in order to place into positions of leadership those who place the interests of the people first? Will we place in positions of leadership those who exhibit the profound sense of empathy that is the fundamental value underpinning Jewish ethics? Broadened empathy that is extended to all members of society, regardless of their color, red or blue, black, brown, or white, regardless of gender, sexual preference, economic condition, or social status. Our founders encapsulated the idea of broad empathy in their motto, E pluribus unum. Our tradition, as we have seen, expresses it in many, many ways, but none more powerful than the description of God that is particularly prominent in our liturgy at this time of year. Adonai, Adonai el rachum v'chanun, erech apayin v'rav chesed v'emet. Adonai, Adonai, compassionate, gracious, patient, abounding in kindness and in honesty and forgiving. According to our scroll, these are the essential ingredients of empathy. They are also, as it turns out, the essential ingredients of leadership. After all, God is placed before us as the ideal, and a human leader's most significant obligation to his nation is to model these godly behaviors. To be an example of compassion and grace, patience, kindness, honesty, and forgiveness, and thereby setting the bar for the rest of us. As our scroll makes clear, this is the roadmap to the creation of a promised land. As the leader of his nation, Josiah's recognition that he had come up short in this regard led him to teshuvah. First acknowledging his own failings and then taking the steps necessary to repair that which was damaged. If we could only elicit such a response by reading the words of our scroll. Of course, we know that that is likely not going to happen. So the best we can do is take seriously our Jewish heritage, the ethic of our Jewish tradition. Read the words of the scroll as we will today, and then advocate for leadership that will take these words to heart and lead by the ideals expressed therein. The Talmud makes absolutely clear the consequences resulting from the failure of a nation and its leaders to live up to these ideals. No less than the destruction of the Second Temple is ascribed to the moral decay of the Israelite nation. It was not the military might of the Roman army, we are told, but rather sinat chinam, gratuitous hatred of one towards another, that led to the demise of the nation. Rotting from the inside out, the rabbis tell us the Israelite nation was ripe to be conquered. 2 millennia later, I sit here in my home office, which for the past 197 days has served as the University Synagogue Rabbinic Study. And I reflect on the Jewish ethic handed to us by the likes of King Josiah, by Moses, by our prophets and our sages, and most importantly, by God. An ethic of compassion, grace, patience, kindness, honesty, forgiveness, and lest we forget, tzedek, justice. And I reflect as well on how the tears in the seams of our nation's fabric have been laid bare over these past 6 months. Growing economic and social disparity, social division and anger and unrest, environmental disasters, an out-of-control pandemic, and a brutal and unprecedented assault on facts and science and truth that has made them all that much worse. it is difficult for me not to fall into Josiah's despair as I witness the sinat chinam, the virus of baseless hatred growing into a pandemic across our nation. During these difficult days, the bright light in our home, our beacon of joy and hope, has been my granddaughter, Ruby. Born on the eve of the pandemic, she sometimes seems to be the only thing that's gone right in 2020. We are blessed that she is in our bubble. As a matter of fact, she's just leaving right now. We're so blessed to be able to see her a few times this week, each week. On multiple occasions, it is her bright blue eyes and her innocent smile that has lifted our sagging spirits. But to be honest, Ruby also causes me a great deal of concern. I wonder about the world we are leaving her, the world we are leaving for all of our children. I gaze out my office window at the orange sky, and I wonder, will this be the color of the sky that she will come to know? Will I have to tell her that it was once blue? What will the nature be of the society that she will join? Will it be one founded on compassion, grace, patience, kindness, honesty, forgiveness, and justice? Or defined by widening gaps and increasing divisions? Will she discover greater opportunity or growing disparity? Will there even be a true democracy in which she can participate? Will she be welcomed and accepted here as a Jew? A question that not so long ago would have never crossed my mind. I have to say, for me, the choices I make, the choices I will make, are no longer for me. They're for Ruby. I've had my opportunities. I've indeed been blessed, so blessed. But I worry about Ruby. Will she be similarly blessed? I'm afraid I'm not really sure. I know my choices are the legacy that I will leave her. And so I look to our scroll. I look as did King Josiah. And I hear the words of Deuteronomy that he did. Words we say on this day, that it is my choice. And frankly, my choice is as clear and as obvious to me as it was to King Josiah 2,600 years ago. Veyahavta b'chayim, choose life. Lema'an tichya ata v'zarecha, so that you and your children may live by loving and obeying and staying close to Adonai, your God. King Josiah was moved by these words to transform his leadership and change the direction of his nation. 2,400 years later, our founders were similarly inspired as they created a new nation founded on human dignity and on liberty and justice for all. 2,600 years after Josiah, 244 years after the creation of this nation, will we too pay attention to the words that call out to us from that scroll? Words that call upon us this day to rise up towards acts upon the God and act upon the godly image in which we were created. Will we raise to positions of leadership those who in words and actions embody the words of that scroll? Leaders who will inspire us to be our best, to do our best, to create communities and neighborhoods and cities and states and a nation created in the image of a world of compassion, grace, patience, kindness, honesty, forgiveness, and justice. What will we choose? All summer we have been reading a beautiful poetic interpretation of the Elenu that reminds us that the word Elenu translates as "it is up to us." As this prayer we are about to recite reminds us, and as this day urges us to see, it is indeed up to us. It is our choice. Uvacharta b'chayim, choose life. Create the world you want. Create the world we all want for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren. A world of compassion, grace, patience, kindness, honesty, forgiveness. A world of liberty and justice for all. That bayom hahu yihiyeh Adonai echad. On that day God will be one. Ushemo echad. And God's name will be one. Elenu. It is up to us. If you would like and you are able, I now invite you to rise, and if you have a prayer book, to turn to page 116 as we join with Cantor Shapiro in the Elenu. Shana Tova.
We rise together for the Elenu.
There are stars up above so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. So it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days These are the ways we remember. Our thoughts turn to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days, and those who died of this season in years past. Our hearts open as well to the wider circles of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing in this new year and always. Let us remain standing for the mourners' Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divera chirute, v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach, la'olam u'la'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha, Berichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Hei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'miromav, huyaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Shalom.